Have you ever caught yourself thinking about something that almost happened? A missed opportunity, a near accident, a person you almost met? Why do those moments feel bigger than the ones that actually happened? Welcome back to another episode of Teen Talk Central. In this week's episode, we're diving into the strange psychology of almost and why they can stick with us longer after the moment passes. Let's start with one of the most interesting types of almost, the near win. In psychology, researchers have found that almost winning, like just missing a prize or goal, can feel way more intense than actually losing. Studies in gambling that show that slot machines were actually designed to show you what a near win was like on purpose, because then it fires up the brain's reward system and it makes you want to keep playing. So even if you are like, oh, I'm gonna stop after the next one, if you see that you're almost there, you're gonna want to play more and play again, and that's basically what the whole point is. Same thing, it's kind of like in sports. Almost winning a championship can fuel an athlete to try harder, but it can also create a haunting what if feeling that kind of sticks with you forever. Like if you're like on the older side and you decide that maybe you're in a pro league and you're like, okay, like I made it to the finals but I didn't win, so I want to try again. But then if you don't try again, then that kind of like, oh, if I did try, I could have won feeling will stay with you for a really long time. And I think that's what scary is. And we also see this everywhere. It's why you're being waitlisted at your dream school feels almost more painful than a full-on rejection. You were so close that your brain had already started like building a future around it, but then you see that decision, and I feel like a rejection just makes it like very blunt and clear that like, okay, like this is over. I mean, you can always like appeal and stuff like that. And then there is the idea of getting waitlisted where it's like, okay, I could have almost made it, like I was so close to getting there but I'm not. And then there's that kind of waiting period where you're now kind of just like anxious all the time, and our brains don't really process what it is. They process at what it almost was, because evolution trained us to spot missed opportunities and learn from them, which I think is a great thing, but it can also be negative in certain situations. Here's a little reflection question for you guys. Have you ever felt more obsessed with something that you almost got rather than something that you fully achieved on the first try? Because personally, I have a lot of these experiences. For example, I was applying to a summer camp at Boston University this past, last school year, and instead of getting in like I thought I would, I got fully waitlisted, and I literally was like so obsessed with trying to go there, and I didn't even end up actually going there. I went to a different summer camp, but I think the idea of me being waitlisted, and it's like the almost, like it really like changed my brain, and I was like fully indulged and like wanting to go in 100% on that camp, even though at the end I didn't, and that's okay. But it's not just the goals that we think about. Sometimes it's the people that we think about. Oh my god, have you guys ever had a missed connection? A stranger that you almost talked to, or a friendship that almost happened? It sticks in our head because of something called the counterfactual thinking. This is when our mind starts playing the what if game. The what if we said hi? What if we had one more week? What if we had met one more week earlier? It's emotional because we're not just imagining a different moment, we're imagining a different version of ourselves and a different life that we could have lived. Personal example for me is my summer camp. If I didn't make the first move to talk to my friend in the elevator, I would have had a completely different friend group, and I would have had a completely different experience, and that is a huge like, oh my god, like what if I never said hi? But then with some other people, it's like, okay, what if I just made the first move and talked to them? And I think that it's like interesting because I think about a lot of different scenarios that could have happened with different people in my life. Now let's look at it kind of from a psychological angle. Counterfactual makes the memory feel unfinished, kind of like an open-ended story where the story has never really ended, but it feels like it did. This is kind of really interesting, and I still wonder what could have happened in certain situations of my life, but it's left open-ended, which means you don't really know what it's gonna happen ever, because you can't go back in time to that moment. And maybe it's not the person or the situation we miss. Maybe it's a version of ourselves we imagined we could have been with them. Yeah. Also, almost aren't always beautiful or bittersweet. Sometimes they can be literally terrifying. Psychologically, we almost experience something bad, like a car accident you narrowly avoid. It creates a unique kind of cocktail, I guess you could say, of emotions of relief and hyper-awareness. Research shows that brain processes almost trauma differently than full traumas. They trigger a massive emotional response, but because nothing bad actually happens, they don't solidify into full PTSD memories. Instead, I think the often lives as flashes of what if, like a kind of like a mental glitch that you revisit sometimes, but not all the time. And it's that feeling where you replay a moment over and over again, and it's like, I could have gotten hurt, I could have lost anything, and yet I'm still here and I'm still alive and I'm still well. I think personally, in some ways, near misses teach us to be grateful, but they also remind us how thin the line can be between what is and what almost was, which I think is really important. All these almost, the wins, the people, the dangers, they kind of built into something else too, which is like alternate reality inside of our head, or like just not something that's real. Our brains are natural simulators. We're wired to imagine different outcomes, and it's just a part of how we plan the future and how we make sense of the past. But sometimes we get stuck imagining alternate lives, like if I had chosen this school, if I had done this, if I had done that, if I had taken that risk. And it's really interesting. I think pop culture also loves this idea. They think of movies like Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, where tiny changes create entire different worlds. And psychologically, this is called an epistemic emotion, which is kind of curiosity, regret, and longing, and feelings that happen not because of what we know, but because what we almost know. And I think this is just being human, is carrying like invisible parallel lives, all the could haves, the should haves, the maybes. Learning to love one we're actually living in is probably the hardest, because we have such wild imaginations. Almosts are messy, and they're beautiful, and they're painful, and they're every emotion under the sun all at once. They kind of remind us that life is not just what happens, it's also the world around us of almost happens. So the next time you find yourself thinking about a what if moment, be gentle. It means that you're alive enough to imagine something more and really use your mind to be creative. I'd love to hear about your guys' almost moments, the ones that you think about sometimes. You can DM me on Teen Talk Central, or just sit with it for a while, because there is a lot of magic in almost. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And if you ever need to reach out or talk to someone, you guys can DM us on Teen Talk Central. And I love you guys so much, and until then, stay curious.